What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another modern video, and today we're going to be playing a few games with the Hardened Scales deck that we went over this past Monday. So if you want to see me explain a little bit more and kind of go over the deck a little bit more in depth in that video before you watch this, it's like it was posted on Monday. I have it in like one of the community tabs, so easy ways to figure out when like those videos and stuff get posted. You can subscribe to the channel, ring notification bell, and keep a lookout for some of the community posts, as well as joining the Discord server as well. Links in the description for that. But of course, super early to get out of the way. I love it. We're firing on all cylinders here. So we have Mono Green Hardened Scales. It is the deck that we featured on Monday, and it's because of this card right here, Hardened Scales, that says whenever a one or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a creature you control, you put that many on it +1. So if it would get one counter, it gets two. If it gets two, it gets three, and so on. And these stack, so if you have two Hardened Scales in play, essentially your creature, if it get one +1/+1 counter, it would get three if you have two Hardened Scales in play. And then you're playing all these cards that care about having +1/+1 counters. It can get super big. So you have Zabaz, which can double up modular triggers from Arcbound Ravager, or rather put essentially have like the same effect as like Hardened Scales off of modular triggers. Does not do it for itself unless you legend rule Zabaz, but you know it is what it is. It can also be an evasive creature by paying a white to give it flying, and a way to destroy some of your other artifacts that have +1/+1 counters on them, or just counters in general. So you can put them on the Ozolith, which allows you to, when a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, you put them on the Ozolith, and then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can put all those counters onto a creature. So this works out to create giant math problems, which we will find in the first match, which actually made our opponent completely rage quit. So I'm going to be bringing you like essentially like a full match plus like that one game that just kind of shows off the power of this deck. What really gets this deck going is like Arcbound Ravager, which you can sacrifice an artifact to put +1/+1 counter on it. You have this in conjunction with like the Ozolith and even Hardened Scales, or anything like that. Even Ozolith the Shattered Spire, if it'll cooperate with me, you can do some pretty dumb, gross, like borderline degenerate things with this deck, and really just actually kill your opponent out of nowhere. So some new tech, Agatha's Cauldron. You can spend mana's over mana any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures that you control with a +1/+1 counter have all activated abilities of those cards exiled with Agatha's Cauldron. All creature cards exiled with Agatha's Cauldron. And you can tap to exile a card from a graveyard, and you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control if a creature was exiled this way. So you can exile Hangerback Walker and give creature +1/+1 counter creatures, pay 1 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. You also have Walking Ballista, which you can pay 4 to put a counter on it and remove a counter to deal damage to any target. Again, we will kind of see some of that stuff in the first game that I want to show off before we get into the full match. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump over to that first match, and or that first game rather, and show off what this Hardened Scales deck is all about. So here we are for this first game. We are on the play. Our hand, these 6 cards plus Forest. Pretty good hand, considering that we have like turn 1 Hardened Scales, and we can go turn 2 Patchwork Automaton into turn 3 Hardened Scale Zabaz, which is going to put a ton of counters on this Patchwork Automaton, and also get a bunch of counters on the Zabaz as well. Decent clock, and then of course any artifacts that we draw after that, like if we find like a Walking Ballista, if we find like a Hangerback Walker or whatever, we're gonna just get a ton of counters thanks to these Hardened Scales. So I figured it was a keep. We have the namesake card. We have 2 of the namesake card, and it's going to be really good. Ancient Stirrings, we find out that we're playing against Tron very early from this Ancient Stirrings. Thankfully, they had a lead on Basic Forest into Power Plant, so we are going to essentially be like a turn ahead of them, and us being on the play sweet. This Agatha's Cauldron is going to be super nice if we can get some creatures in the graveyard. Currently, not doing too great, but we have this Patchwork Automaton. They're gonna have a hard time getting rid of it. They play the Power Plant we knew about. They're gonna go scrying for the other Tron piece. So essentially, we could be looking at Tron very soon. So this Walking Ballista draw was like actually just nuts. So we're gonna see like a synergy that I believe I pointed out in the deck tech that we did on Monday. That is going to work very well with this Patchwork Automaton. So I believe we end up playing the Soul's Call, or no, we end up playing Ballista on one. We do that for now because we're gonna get a ton of counters on this. You'll probably see it more in the other game than I guess this game, but you know we put a bunch of counters on this Ballista. Essentially, we're gonna be able to like shoot our opponent with these counters, and then exile the Agatha, you know, play Agatha Soul Cauldron, play Zabaz, and then we're going to be able to, you know, eat this and do a bunch of things. Like, it's going to be great. So, they still been scrying for their last Tron piece. We know that they're going to have 8 mana on their next turn. I end up shooting them with the counters, play a Soul's Cauldron. We're going to eat this Ballista. We have a ton of power on this Patchwork Automaton. So, like, essentially, we got, you know, counters from, you know, 3 counters from casting this Agatha's Cauldron. We got 3 counters from casting the Zabaz, and we got 3 counters from exiling the Walking Ballista. We're hitting our opponent for 13 here, which is exactly lethal, but, you know, we had 25 damage, even more. We had like 28 damage thanks to Zabaz also getting the ability from having +1/+1 counters on it. So this game was insane. We hit our opponent for Xaxes on turn 4. So the fact that Tron stumbled literally from the jump and we were able to capitalize on all of it. Even if we didn't have like the Zabaz or whatever, the Ancient Stirrings was going to help us find something. Like the fact that we had this Walking Ballista, and we have 10 counter, we end up having 9 counters on this, 10 power, hit them to 3, and we can remove the counters and shoot them anyway. Like we had them dead from, you know, a pretty high life total, even from like 20, you know, if we didn't do anything else prior to this. So that's what I want to show off, just kind of like the power of the deck and how it could just easily snowball like out of control. So now that we got it out of the way, let's go ahead and jump over to our full match and see what this deck can do in a 3-game set. So here we have game 1. We are on the play against an unknown opponent. This is the hand that we keep. You know, we have a Ancient Stirrings, we have Patchwork Automaton, and a Hangerback Walker with an Agatha Soul Cauldron. So we kind of have a little bit of synergy here where we can, you know, play like an Ancient Stirrings, go get something, and then we can play like a Patchwork Automaton on 2. Then we can play a Soul's Cauldron plus a Hangerback Walker and get Patchwork up to a 4/4. And with most decks, you know, they're not going to be able to pay Ward 2 for quite a while, so we're going to have a lot of counters basically on this Patchwork Automaton with the eventual upside of just getting to put more counters on it, and if we find Ancient Stirrings, it's going to be pretty sick. So here we lead on the Ancient Stirrings, and we find Walking Ballista. We are about to go insane because we're going to get another counter on this Patchwork Automaton, and we'll have a Walking Ballista to eat with this Soul's Cauldron, which means that we have something for the somewhere for the counters to go. We immediately find out that we're playing against Burn from the start here, or some kind of like super aggressive red deck. We just get our Urza Saga out there. We play the Patchwork Automaton. I don't play these out immediately for the fact that our opponent doesn't. You know, they're more than likely they're not going to be able to kill this. Like, they're not playing Gut Shot, or at least like if they are playing it, you know, good on them, they have to tap out to essentially kill a Patchwork Automaton to get in 2 points of damage. So I find it worth it to wait with the Soul's Cauldron because we obviously have a land drop. If we find like a Hardened Scales or something like that, we're going to be able to get more counters on this Patchwork. So, you know, definitely worth waiting a turn. We pass. We just find another Patchwork Automaton. So we end up going and just playing this Soul's Cauldron. Probably could have waited and just played the other Patchwork and then gotten like these other counters and stuff going. But I wanted to essentially like capitalize on kind of what we had going on here, knowing that we could just do all this and then, you know, essentially make this like a 6/6. Like, our opponent is not getting in a meaningful attack anytime soon, you know, without a combination of like burn spells. That said, we would be in trouble if we lost this, but then we're also, you know, we have an Urza Saga and stuff like that, so we do have some creatures. They suspend 2 Rift Bolts. We just roll this up, put another counter on it. find another Hangback Walker. We're going to float some mana, and we're going to get a Shadow Spear, and we're just going to, run our opponent into the dirt here. We're going to put another counter on this. It's going to end up being 8 power. We're going to hit our opponent for 8. We're going to gain 8 life, and it doesn't matter what they draw. Like they're just hoping that I have a heart attack on the computer. So we win game 1. Let's go ahead and jump over to game 2 and see how that goes. All right, immediately jumping into game 2. We're going fast and furious because Hardened Scales is all about family. We have this interesting synergy here where we are on the draw and we drew our Gemstone Caverns. Gemstone Caverns lets you put into play with the luck counter by exiling a card from your hand if it is in your opening hand and you are not the starting player. So now this taps for any color of mana instead of a colorless mana. We exile the forest in our hand. We are going to be able to play like a Hardened Scales and an Ozolith on turn 1 with this Saga, and then be able to follow it up with like Ravager and stuff. I mean, this is just going to be nuts. We have Hangerback Walker to essentially is like a 2 scale thing, which is what we really want to do because things kind of get crazy with Ravager, Ozolith, and Hangerback Walker. So, we sort of kind of get to be on the play. Our opponent leads on Swift Spear. No big deal. We know that we're not really going to be able to add anything. We draw another Hangerback Walker, which is going to make things really interesting, which means that we could like play a smaller Hangerback Walker and then just like go back-to-back turns. But they are getting super aggressive. They play their Goblin Guide, Lava Spike us. They end up putting us to 12 on turn 2. Not very good, but we're still like in not bad a position. Like we can block with these Hangerback Walkers and stuff. The benefit here of like Walker plus Arcbound Ravager is that you play a Hangerback Walker. With Hardened Scales, it's gonna have 2 counters on it. Even if we block and it dies, we're gonna be able to put 2 counters on the Ozolith, make 2 Thopters, and then play another Hangerback Walker, and then put more counters on the Hangerback Walker. Really wishing that we had the forest so we could find a way to fit in this Ozolith and like double spell with for 4 mana. But unfortunately, not going to be the case here, at least for the time being. But with this Ravager plus this Hangerback Walker, I mean, we have a ton of potential like Thopters, which is something that we outlined in the video if you want to go check that out from Monday. So 2/2 Hangerback Walker, no big deal. They're going to attack. We are going to continue to miss on lands from the Goblin Guy, but we find a Walking Ballista, which is pretty nice. Our opponent's going to Skullcrack, obviously just to let this survive, but, that kind of pointless, honestly. I mean, we're not going to be gaining life. I mean, we have the Shadow Spear, but that's not going to stop us. So we end up going and getting a Zabaz just because we want more counters. We essentially have, like, the potential here. Like, we could probably just kill our opponent from here. Not from here specifically, but, if we find another land, we can play Ravager, and then we're going to sack Ravager. It's going to get 2 counters. We're just going to be able to keep going and going and going and going to the point where one of these Thopters can be lethal, strictly for the fact that we're going to play Ravager. It's going to have 2 counters. It's going to have 4 from the Hangerback Walker, and then 5 counters are going to go on the Ozolith. We're going to make 5 Thopters, and then each Thopter is going to add 2 counters to the Ravager. And then eventually the Ravager is going to get sacked, and we're going to be able to put the counters on a token from the modular, and then we're going to put the counters on the Ozolith. This game, if we draw a land, it's over. But of course, our opponent doesn't attack. They pass a turn. We don't draw a land. We draw Ancient Stirring, so this is more than likely going to find a land. We end up getting the basic forest. Get in with the Thopters because we're essentially going to block with these. Like, it won't matter. I mean, we miss out on 2 counters with Ravager if we lose the Hangerback Walker, and then obviously more with the Zabaz and stuff, but 7 counters are going to go on the Ozolith, which is going to turn to 8 here, and then there's going to be 5 Thopters in play, which we've already went over. Each is going to be 2 counters, so essentially that's going to be 12. There's going to be 7 counters, and that's 19. That's 20 just on 1 Thopter. They end up play with firing us on our end step, and then lightning bolting us. Very unlikely that they don't have any burn to actually necessarily win, but we're just kind of hoping and praying. And of course, they have Skullcrack, which hurts a lot because that is a game that we could have potentially won, and had we had drawn a land instead of the Ancient Stirrings. we would have we had a very good chance of winning the game. That said, our opponent did have play with fire and lightning bolt, so they kind of had it rolled up in a way where like whatever one that we targeted, but we also you know could have potentially like played around it as well. So like there's definitely some things that we had to watch out for, but it is what it is. That's a tough game to lose, but at the same time, they kind of had to have a lot of things kind of going their way for us to lose it. So let's go ahead and let's see if we can turn around here in game three. All right, so here we are for game three. And we have a hand that we can lean on Chalice of the Void. We have Ozolith to pair with Hangerback Walker. Essentially, we're not going to be playing against our own Chalice, and any 0 or 1 drops that we want to get, we can go grab with these Urza Sagas. So we lead on this just to kind of get these going, because we do have a quick kill like past this, with some help. But our opponent decides to tear our Urza Saga, so like, okay, that seemed good enough. Soul's Cauldron, sweet, still not playing to Chalice on 1. Let's just lead on this Urza Saga again. Opponent plays a land, tears another one. Unfortunate. Good thing we have 2 more lands. We draw like the Springleaf Drum as well, so it gives us a 1-drop to play that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to if we actually Chaliced. So, pretty sweet. Obviously, Chalice on 1 is very good against Bird. So, which, here they're playing their 1 mana spell and then they're Boros charming us. Doing a ton of damage themselves, making things a little bit easier for us. Finding that this Chalice on 1 down, draw a 3rd Urza Saga, and then we're going to be able to get down a Hangerback Walker and then follow it up with a Ozolith. We would not have been able to do this if we played this first, so unfortunately, at least doing it this way, it gives us the option to activate this, or, activate this plus this, get a ton of counters on Hangerback Walker, also giving us the option to just make a construct with the Urza Saga, so definitely some things that we can do, but, is what it is. Our opponent just sacking their canyons and stuff, trying to find something to do. We end up finding a land, and I decide that we're just going to play land. We're going to play the Soul's Cauldron, and we're going to make a construct. We're just going to be a big construct. Obviously, with some help, we can grow this construct even bigger, thanks to Hangerback Walker and getting the Ozolith here. And then we end up playing the Ravager. And here we have an option to kind of go for it, where we can, sack like Ravager or sack Hangerback Walker to Ravager, or, we could, in theory, like sacrifice like a Springleaf Drum to put 4 counters on Arcbound Ravager, and then, sacrifice, or, we can do a few various things. We could activate Ozolith, put counters on Hangerback Walker, ends up being 3 counters, sacrifice it, make a bunch of Thopters. It's going to just pump up this construct on top of getting to also then put the counters on the construct. There's a few things that we could do. I basically decide that I'm not willing to do it in the face of something like a smash or like a shatter effect on the construct. So I just attack for 8. Our opponent decides to Boros Charm, and that essentially with Chalice on 1 gave me the green light. Like, okay, like I can go for this. Even if our opponent like didn't do this, we're hitting them for 8, putting them to 6. They put us to 7 with this Boros Charm, and then they have to have land plus 2 other burn spells to do so, and they have to be burn spells that you can play from underneath a Chalice of the Void. So while I don't think we were necessarily pressured to go for it there, the fact that our opponent opened up the window, for any number of lines of plays to essentially put a ton of counters on this construct token and win the game that way. While we would be shrinking the construct, by sacking artifacts with Arcbound Ravager, we do kind of offset it because we're getting an extra counter every time from the Ozolith. Obviously, a little bit harder because now the counters that we lose from like the Hangerback Walker, they're going to go in this Ozolith and they're not going to do anything. Even noting that the Ozolith is going to put more counters on the Shattered Spire is going to put more counters on the Ozolith, and so on. There's a lot of counters that could potentially be thrown around, but we had a clean, easy. We can just attack, force our opponent to do something, and they did it at the worst possible time because we would be able to capitalize and win the game on the spot there. Instead of them having, a slim chance for sure. I mean, they've played, another Boros Charm, so they would have to have like a third and fourth copy of Boros Charm. So, yeah, we ended up pulling it out. Great game, great match from our opponent. 3-1 overall, or yeah, 3-1 overall with this deck. A lot of fun. You see how complicated you can get, how big you can make the creatures, and really, there's probably like even some lines that I'm missing that would be super optimal to get even more damage, which is pretty scary for a deck like this. So. Yeah, if you want to see more content like this, more modern, more pioneer, all that stuff, be sure to subscribe, ring the notification bell, join the Discord server, link in the description down below. I'll have the deck list linked to in the description as well if you want to copy this deck, play it on Moto, all that fun stuff. That's going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.